What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. Got a funny AskReddit today, so let's get to it. Okay, so this one admittedly is, yes, a bit old of a post, but there were some pretty funny responses here. So the question was, security guards of Reddit, what's the funniest/weirdest thing you've seen someone do on a security camera? Now, I'll be honest, a lot of these were about sex, and so I've had to weed out a lot of the responses, even though some of them were really funny. But there's still a few in here that do go into that. So if that's gonna bug you, then I apologize, and no hard feelings if you leave. When I worked in a casino, my boyfriend at the time, who worked in security at the casino, informed me that everyone in security and surveillance could, in fact, watch me dance the robot in the elevators. That's just kind of cute. Funniest thing? At around 2 a.m. on a weekend, random dude walking down the street with no shirt on, systematically going to all the trees along the road and hugging them passionately, before a random motorist catches his attention, that is. Shirtless guy charges out onto the street in front of the car, causing the driver to slam on his brakes. He then proceeded to drop to all fours and mock charge the vehicle. The terrified motorist throws their car into reverse, turns completely around, and speeds off. Shirtless guy continues to hug trees. At that point, I called the police. Okay, did this take place in Florida? Because this totally seems like a Florida man story. A colleague of mine was just telling me about his previous workplaces when this tale came up. Anyway, their office had a covered walkway running all the way around the floor. So, on a quiet shift, they decided to have an office chair rally. So, the four of them scoot off on their office chairs as fast as they can. Down one side of the walkway, round to the corner at top speed, round the block, and all the way back. As they head back, they find a security guard at their desk, arms folded and looking quite grumpy. He starts to apologize to the security guard for being silly, and the guard replies, "No worries, I had a $5 on the fat guy." Not really funny, but it was weird. I worked security at a casino on the Canadian border several years ago and was standing at an entrance checking IDs. In Washington, if a casino allows alcohol on the floor, then everyone must be 21 or older. So I'm standing just inside the entrance, and this dirty homeless guy comes walking up to me and asks me, "Hey, let me speak to your manager." Two things immediately spring to mind. One, we're on a highway about 20 miles from the nearest town, and it's the middle of the winter. How did a homeless guy get here? Two, my manager was a busy man and would not want to be bothered by this. The exchange goes something like this. Me, "Hey buddy, what can I do for you?" Homeless guy, "I need to speak to your manager." He's busy at the moment. Sorry. Anything he can do, I can help you with though. "Listen, OP, I need to speak to your manager, and I need to speak to your manager now." I hesitate. "I am a federal agent." Pulls out an FBI badge. "I need to speak to your manager now." Oh crap. "Okay, sir, 1 second. I immediately called my manager, of course. Turns out that they had a huge drug bust going on in our parking lot with some Canadian Asian gang, but had not sprung the trap yet, and since it was tribal land, they had to get permission or something like that. About 5 minutes later, shift rotation happened, and I lucked out and got to go to the camera room. Another federal agent came inside with us and told us exactly who in the parking lot were the good/bad guys so we could follow them. I got to see all the action. It was like watching some bad 80s cop movie. Apparently, they were trading a van full of marijuana for a lesser amount of cocaine. As soon as the trade was made, the Mounties/feds appeared everywhere out of all these vehicles they had set up before the bust. There was like 4 gang members and about 50 or so feds, all loaded to the teeth with shotguns and rifles. Wow, that sounds like an interesting day at work. Dang. Sounds pretty awesome too, though. I work surveillance at a casino. Several years ago, when tokens were still used in the casinos, we received a call for a possible token theft. While one of my coworkers was reviewing the coverage we had, we overheard a radio call for a guest down outside the exit. I pulled up coverage to watch the EMTs perform CPR on him and noticed a spilled bucket of tokens around him. It's not unusual for a guest to take tokens home and bring them back another day. Well, my co-worker completed the review for the theft and said, "Okay, we're looking for a black male wearing a red shirt and black pants." I took the camera I was using, put it on his monitor, and said, "You mean this guy?" It was the same person. Further review showed that he took the tokens and immediately walked to the exit. When he was about 20 feet from the exit, one of our security officers exited right behind him, simply to walk outside. He had no clue the man in front of him had just stolen over $100 in tokens. Our only assumption then was the man thought the officer was coming toward him and had a heart attack. I'll be honest, when I first started reading this, I really thought this was going into an Ocean's 11 spoof. But, nope, I was pleasantly surprised. There was a cat in our parking lot, trotting along, zipping around, but the frame rate on our camera matched perfectly with its legs, so we never saw the legs move. It looked like the cat was just on an invisible skateboard, and it was the funniest thing I've seen in my life. There was also a skunk that got his head stuck in a yogurt cup. We noticed him when we came into work. He was walking in tight circles non-stop. We looked at the overnight feed, and the poor thing was doing small circles non-stop for 6 hours. Watching it in fast forward with Benny Hill playing on our phones was awesome. We drew straws to see who would try to knock it off its head. We caught plenty of sex on camera too, and people falling down. I monitor about 70 different banks and over 200 ATM cameras. I get a lot of the generic crazy stuff like masturbating, sex, nose picking, but I remember one night I was watching an overhead vestibule camera in one of our banks. It's a 24-hour vestibule so members can come in and use the ATM. Around 5 a.m., a guy shows up and gets down on his hands and knees on the tile floor. At first, I couldn't tell what he was doing, but knew it was suspicious, so I called our patrol officer and told him to head out that way. As I watched, I could slowly see what he was drawing. I thought, oh great, he's going to draw dicks all over the bank floor. But it turned out he was actually drawing a unicorn. I couldn't believe it. Our patrol driver showed up when he was halfway through and the guy took off running. We don't know what he was using to draw on the tile, but it was some kind of chalky stuff. We were able to get a janitor out there to clean it up before the bank opened. I had to explain the story to my boss about 4 times before he believed what I was telling him. I had pictures and videos recorded, of course, and I begged him to let me have them so I could submit them to a show or something, but he gave me the whole, "It's bank property, so you can't show anyone the pictures," etc. Now all I have is a story of some random graffiti artist who loves unicorns. I never saw him again. I had many part-time security guard assignments over several years when I was in school, and by far, the weirdest people I encountered were my fellow security guards. I always worked night shifts and always at industrial sites when no one else was around and there was not much to do. Sometimes I would read the guard logbook entries and some of it was time cube quality. There was this one ex-World War II Marine, as he would constantly remind you, who still referred to himself as Sergeant E. And if you did anything to set him off, like maybe show up 5 minutes late, he would go on an epic rant and get stuck in a kind of feedback loop of ever-escalating ranting. I remember once I just had to leave him, and as I was driving off, I watched him in the rearview mirror, pacing back and forth in the parking lot, spinning around and waving his arms, ranting to himself. Good times. Also, sometimes my friends would come to the site and we'd play Dungeons and Dragons all night. Oh, you gotta love when you can get paid to goof off. Oh, those jobs are sweet. Very seldom do they actually pay very well, but man, those are some nice gigs. My husband used to work at a hotel and things started going missing in his office. So the GM set up a camera facing the desk, but not hidden. If you looked up, you'd see it. Anyhow, they run the camera for the first time, and in the morning, the GM checks in. What they find was the night auditor setting up his laptop on my husband's desk, propped his foot up on a garbage can, turned on his favorite video, and began, doing stuff. I apologize for my lack of terms, but I'm at work and don't want to type certain words. But I think you get my point. As this boy is going at it, a guest comes to the desk. He stops and tucks it away and helps the guest. Guest leaves and he gets back to it. Finishes twice during the night and starts up a third time, but there's just too many guests interrupting him. He was fired the next day, and my husband sterilized his desk and work area for nearly the entire day. Every nook and cranny. That's just gross. Oh my gosh. And how do you think you're going to get away with that? I mean, still, like, if you log in using your user credentials, can't your company track your web browsing history? I mean, I'm not exactly some savant when it comes to web security, but I'd imagine that would be something they could kind of link to you, right? I don't know. Kind of relevant. Me and some friends went to a club in a big shopping center. The way this is set up is that the club is part of the center, but the door to it is outside, and you can't access the rest of the mall at all during the night. Well, after some table dancing, one of my mates was desperately looking for the toilet. He went through a door, then another door, then another one, and ended up inside the mall somehow. Unsure of what to do and wasted, he walked around and found an unlocked door. He pushed through it and found a freezer. Deciding that it was go time, he was going to take the leak inside. He opened it and jackpot. Dozens and dozens and dozens of Ben & Jerry's. He immediately attacks Chunky Monkeys, brownies, and fish foods, gorging himself until he realized that, frick, he was still locked out. Picking up a stalk of ice cream, he kicks a door open and found a girl that works at the club. Covered in ice cream after eating it all with his hands, he asks her to let him back into the nightclub. She obliges, and ice creams were had by all. The whole place is covered in security cameras, and we always wondered what his little Ben & Jerry's adventure must have looked like to anyone who happened to stumble over the tape. I'm not a security guard technically, but I do watch the cameras at work. I lock the doors at 11 p.m. and there is nothing funnier than watching people run into automatic doors. There was a security video at my office that was passed around of a girl during a rainstorm falling, fully submerged, into a manhole hidden in a puddle. She was fine, by the way. I'm not a security guard, but my senior year of high school, one of my friends saw a freshman struggling to get something out of the vending machine. Being the heroic senior that he was, he walked up, pulled the vending machine back a bit, and let it fall back. The entire front glass pane shattered at this point. He reached in, picked up the bag of chips, and handed it to the freshman with an absolute poker face. He knew there was a security camera on the vending machine, so he went straight to the dean of students' office, and they ended up watching the video. The dean was usually kind of a jerk, but he wasn't even mad. He just laughed out loud and said, "You actually gave him what he paid for." I have a bank of over 100 cameras that cover an almost 2 square mile facility. I have no idea I'm reading Reddit. When I am watching, most of the crazy stuff I see is wildlife being amusing. A buck teasing a coyote in a field, red-tailed hawks diving in to eat pigeons, snakes eating gophers, goose migrations, and in the springtime, any number of animals, especially the jackrabbits, going at it like dogs in heat. Regarding humans, however, I did see a guy steal something. When he was confronted with the video, he said, extremely earnestly, that he was sleepwalking. When the video went on to him making out with his married female co-worker, that story fell apart. Yeah, I'd imagine it would quite quickly. Oh. I don't know why people think they can get away with things these days. Everything's cameraed. I mean, Person of Interest was a whole TV show about the surveillance state. Does lead to some funny stories like this, though. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or uplifting AskReddit content, then go ahead and check out the playlist link in the description below. Also, check us out on social media at the Instagram, Twitter, or Patreon links in the description as well. Now you go out there, have a great day, I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.